hope I can do this tonight because I really don't want to go through this whole videotaping again. So when I left off last time, I was talking about getting my loan, and I want to go back for a moment and just put this on a time scale of how things were put together, and you'd me think about this as you started practice. I met with my supervising physician, Dr. Morin. It was late summer of 2010, I think August or September is where I went out to dinner with him, and we talked about the idea of creating a headache clinic. So I started immediately doing research in business. I mentioned that last time. And then probably around November is when I started sending out first to the state of Washington, the Medical Quality Assurance Commission. And they couldn't do anything much until, like as I said last time, until I had an address. But I just asked them theoretically, do you see a big problem with me working in my island, Anacortes, full-time, and Dr. Morin working 3 days a month in another location? So certainly they told me I'd have to apply as a remote site, which I knew was the probability, and that's what I did. So now it was around December, and then also I contacted my malpractice insurer that I had at the time, Physicians Insurance, and I asked them, I hadn't announced this to my employer yet, but I asked them, would they be willing to supply me with malpractice insurance if I were to be the practice owner? And they said, no problem, sure, we'll do that. They weren't being honest, but that's what they said. So now around the first week of December is the first real step I took, is when I went to get my loan, and I went through that story last time. So that gives you somewhat of a time frame. Now my goal of opening the practice was May 1st. It takes roughly 90 days to be credentialed with insurance companies at any site. If you change jobs, you have to go through the same thing. So I had this in my mind playing out that I had my loan by the end of December, and then the next step I'd hire employees, a full-time medical assistant, quote, or / office manager, and a biller. So anyway, I won't rehash the problems with financing, which you heard about last time. But so then the next step, I did sometime around January tell my employers I was leaving, and that's where things got awkward. So, as I said before, you had to have an address before you could do anything. So the next step in this process, you have to have malpractice insurance, and you have to have state supervisory agreement lined up before you move on. Now, talking about state supervisory agreement, it was a little complicated at first. Now, this is unique to my situation. I don't know if anyone else would have this situation where really the home clinic is where I worked, and the physician, the supervising physician, in reality worked in the satellite clinic. He's there 2 days a week. That clinic did not have a mailing address. It did not have a telephone. We transferred phone calls from my main clinic. So, all reality, 85% of patients were seen in Anacortes with a big office, not this little tiny office up in Bellingham, where we were there I was there 1 day a week, and Dr. Morton was there just 2 or 3 days a month. But the state of Washington said wherever the physician sits, that has to be your main clinic. And then where the PA is, that has to be your remote clinic. It made no sense. And it created lots of problems for several weeks with the clerical people involved with the Medical Assurance Commission. So, and here's how this became practical. And I'm just trying to tell you why I'm now living in a cave. Is some of the stress that started to build up. So the problem was they had to mail Dr. Morin stuff at his address, which would have been in Bellingham, but we didn't have a mailbox there. So we went around and round and round and round about, they kept mailing it to this place. I had to put down the physical address of where we'll be working in Bellingham, and by that time I had secured also space in Bellingham, which is about 28 miles away from Anacortes where I work. So we secured that space and gave out that address, but they kept sending mail there. And then of course it'd be returned, and they'd call me, well, what's the problem here? The problem is, like I've said, the main office is in Anacortes. No, it can't be. They said it has to be Bellingham. That's where the doctor is. I said to them, so if Dr. Moore was to climb a mountain and stuck up a flag on that mountain and saw one patient there per year, that has to be your clinic headquarters, whereas the PA is down in this big mega center. See, I didn't have a mega center, but I'm just using this as a bizarre illustration. The PA is there full-time, seeing 99.9% of the patients. Still, you'd have to call that flag up on the side of the mountain where the doctor saw one patient that whole year, the hub of your clinic. They said, absolutely, wherever the doctor is the hub. So it's just another one of those Alice in Wonderland experiences I went through. By the time, so this is January, by the time February came along, I was able to get past the clerical people. I forgot how I did it. I think I ended up calling Bellingham, the main clinic, and having people look for mail there and grabbing it from the postman if it came to Dr. Morin to make this work. But once I got past these clerical, I'm not a cleric. That kind of stuff drives me crazy. I'm a rational person. But anyway, once I got past that point and got to a physician who was part of this commission, who I could talk to as a rational human being, it was easy. I told him her story, and he said, no sweat. Oh, it sounds like a great idea. He was concerned, though, being a headache clinic, that it was some kind of, opioid pushing, pain clinic that we were just going to, see 500 patients a day and give them OxyContin for, $300 a patient. So I had to make it clear that that wasn't what we were doing. And once that was clear, it was no problem. So that went smoothly. Once I got past that, probably 6 weeks of hurdles. Now, I'm getting ready to apply for a health insurance, credentialing. Now, like most PAs, I've worked had worked 30 years at that time as a PA, almost 30 years. And the only part I had to do with the billing side was just making sure I charted correctly and make sure I had my billing credentials or my codes correctly. But otherwise, I had no contact really with health insurance companies. I mean, I went through credentialing every time I changed jobs. So I decided to hire a professional, a group in Kentucky. And overall, it's one of the brighter spots. I think they did a good job. But it did cost me $10,000 up front. And that's when these expenses start rolling in. So they started this process of credentialing. So I have an address in Anacortes. I have an address in Bellingham now, the two sites. Now I'm trying to think the next thing that happened. I think the next thing that happened, my malpractice insurer. So I went to Physicians Insurer. I had to do that first before I started credentialing with insurance companies. And I said, okay, I need three face sheets. They're called face sheets. They summarize your coverage. I'll pay them the money. I need 3 face sheets, one for myself, one for the practice, and one for Dr. Morin. Well, in a couple weeks later, I get a face sheet for the practice and one for Dr. Moore, none for me. So I can't start this credentialing because I don't have a face sheet. Insurance malpractice coverage, proof of malpractice coverage. Call them again. Okay, where is my face sheet? This is one of the things I have these things about, I guess, human behavior I don't understand. I don't understand when people are just dishonest, and they were dishonest from the beginning. They kept saying, well, we'll work on it and try to get it to you. They knew from the beginning, because one of their physician owners of this insurance company, that's what they told me later, had made the decision there's no way in hell he's given a PA a malpractice insurance, proof of malpractice insurance, if the PA owns the practice. Now, I don't know why they couldn't have told me that in November. That would save me a lot of pain and suffering. Well, anyway, I had now paid them for a premium, and they would not produce a face sheet. Now, I do these sidebars, and I'm going to do a sidebar here for a second. PAs who've never been through this often say, well, that's unfair. I'll take them to court. Life is unfair. Who was it? I think Bill Gates said that. Life is unfair, and taking people to court is not easy. I've done it. I went through a breach of contract lawsuit against a large hospital group and won, but it was 2 years, and it was very, very hard. I came out with peanuts compared to what I lost. The lawyer took half of what I got. So, suing people left and right is not easy. Life is unfair. The malpractice insurance told me in November, no problem, we'll cover you, which was very important to this whole process. And now, once I've paid them and in the process, they will not produce for me a proof of insurance. So that's a huge problem. You can't start seeing patients. It takes, like I said, 90 days. We're now scheduled to start opening on May 1st. So I argued with them. So I already went through this emotional battle with the landlord when I called the number on the side of the building. It happened to be someone who didn't own the building anymore. And then, anyway, that problem. And I went through this big problem with Wells Fargo. So I advise you to find other financing. So now we're at this issue of malpractice. I would be extremely clear. I mean, I was extremely clear. I don't know how to make it better, but you just have to be prepared for these things that people double cross you. They're dishonest. So anyway, they would never produce for me a sheet. So I went ahead and started this credentialing using Dr. Morin's cover sheet and the practice cover sheet. And this is crazy, I started looking for another malpractice insurer and found one. I called my friend who's a PA owner, a practice owner, and he gave me the name of his insurer. He's in the state of Washington. So I called them up, and sure enough, it was a piece of cake for them. They produced a cover sheet for me within days, which the physician's insurance, I spent, well, from the time I first talked to them, it had been 3 or 4 months that they couldn't produce it. So I was double insured there for about, I'd already signed the first premium I think I'd signed for with physician's insurance was only for maybe 2 months. So as soon as that premium expired, I just never renewed it and let it fall. And they were all worried, oh, you're without insurance. No, I'm sorry, I have insurance through another group. I think of their name, Medical Protective. They were a very good insurance company, so I sing their praises. So anyway, I let them fall aside, but that created more complications. So now I'm paying $10,000 for a group in Kentucky to do my credentialing. Now, it brings me to another issue. That this is one. Now, some of these things, just like I've talked about, are just things that happen, and you can't predict them. A lot of people say, "Well, I would never let that happen to me. I wouldn't call the wrong number to lease a flat or a." I'm thinking European terms here, not a flat, a suite. I would never do that. You know, those things you really can't predict, and no one's smart enough to know those things. Now, I'm going to come to a place now where I personally made a mistake. Now, until now, my only mistake was underestimating some of these problems. But now my first mistake is I knew that billing was very, very important to me, and I didn't take it as a trivial matter at all. I started doing research and trying to find a good biller. I went through my CPA, so I did sign not a contract, but agreement with a CPA and bookkeeper at this point. So it's like January or February of 2011. So I started looking for a biller, but in my mind's eyes, I saw billing. You know, I haven't done a simple IRS form in more than 30 years since I've had kids, but you know, they have the EZ form. It's like a one-pager that you fill out in 15 minutes and send it in and get your refund. So that's what I saw billing like. You know, you contract with an insurance company, they're gonna pay you $150 for this certain code of a follow-up appointment, and you see that patient and you fill out the bill correctly and submit it to them, and then your money will come in. That's the way I thought it worked. It did work that way probably 10, maybe 8 years ago. It does not work that way anymore. And this is a very fundamental understanding. Now, you might think I have a little bit bias, but I'm not. I've talked to lots and lots of health insurance companies. I have fought. I've been in the ring with them for 4 or 5 years now. And I can tell you factually, and it's just a no-brainer, it is a business. They have one goal, and that's to make profit. Really, even if they're non-profit, they want to please their stockholders. So everything they do is to increase their profits. And right now, with the Affordable Care Act, they're really scared their profits are going to fall. Now, just think the person at the top of the little pyramid is making anywhere from $10 to $80 million a year, and he's paid compensation based on how much profits they make, and that's the driving force. So they may come out with things about, we want you to stop smoking, we want you to wear seatbelts. In the back of their minds, you're thinking, you stop smoking, you're going to save us some money in cancer treatment. That's really what they're thinking. But now it's becoming really a hostile environment that every bill you submit, they have people that's going to try their best to find any reason in the universe not to pay you. Every single bill you submit, none of them are just paid. So you start this battling with them. And it's brutal, and it's very, very frustrating. And that's why I'm living in a cave right now. And that's why I will never, ever do business with insurance companies again. So this is where my friend was correct, that you look at, you put in your number of patients per day, you put in your codes for each of those patients, you look at what the insurance companies pay for those codes, and then cut it in half, because they will take you to the mattress, as I said in The Godfather, on every single patient, just about. Now, the other problem is with the expansion of Obamacare, or Affordable Care Act, the insurance companies have rapidly grown, and they've hired lots and lots of people. So now mistakes are being made, but primarily they've been made on the insurance side, and it does not matter. If they make a clerical error, you're the one that will not get paid, and it's in their favor. I know of no other business in the world that benefits from making mistakes, but that's exactly the way it is. Now I'm gonna give you one example, and I could give you thousands every single day, because I had a biller, but I dealt with the billing every single day. So you submit a bill for a patient who you've seen. As a new patient, you spend, in my case, sometimes 70 minutes, 90 minutes with a very complex patient. Your brain is about to explode trying to figure this out. They've been all over the country, they failed everything. So you spend all this effort, and you bill the insurance company for $350. That's what it costs. And by contract, they're supposed to be paying you about $200, $250 back. So then it comes, first of all, the bill's submitted and nothing comes back. You don't hear from them. So then my poor biller has to get on the phone, sit on hold for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. Finally gets to, oh, this person doesn't know anything about it. They bring you up to the next level. Oh, we got to do some research. Can you call back tomorrow? My biller calls back the next day. She's on the phone 30 minutes. Where's the money? We're looking into it. Next day, call back. Sits on the phone 30 minutes, calls back, and then they say, oh yeah, we see that person was not covered on that day. Really? Well, we have a copy of their insurance card. It says they were covered. Well, according to our computers, they weren't covered till the next day. And this is, they're not lying. I think they just simply made a mistake on their end. So therefore, guess what? That entire visit was for free. And you said, oh, that's not fair. That's not fair. I'll sue them. No, you won't. There's absolutely nothing you can do. And I've talked to my congressman several times about this. And he said there's nothing he can do about this. But it's a very slanted field right now in the direction of the insurance company, especially for small practices. And that's why I'm saying it's very, very hard for a small practice to make it. They are brutal. They reject claim after claim after claim. Now before, here's where I was naive and where I made a mistake. My mistake was thinking that, you know what? If we get the claim right, they're gonna pay it. So we just have to be careful about getting the claim right. No, I'm sorry, that's 50% of it. The other 50% are all the mistakes and hidden rules that they have. You might put down the date of birth of the patient, December 12th, 1984. They have down 12, I forgot the date I picked, 12, let's say December 9th, 1984. Okay, and they got down 12/9/1984. Therefore, they're not paying the claim because their computer says they don't agree. You put down DEC and they put down 12. Okay, and sometimes we put down 12 and they want it in DEC. So these kinds of things will drive you insane, and that's why I'm living alone on an island in a cave right now. So that's a very important thing I want to bring up, and I wish I'd known it in the beginning. I don't know what I would have done different. I said before, if I ever try this again, I would do it as cash only, and for this reason. Someday this is going to be fixed, but until then. And some of my stories I go along will come back to these insurance problems. So now I'm credentialed with insurance companies, and now let me tell you the next big stressor that just blew my mind. Well, I'm getting ready. I just hired... I was talking earlier about my CPA gave me I talked to her about a biller, and I did some research and came up with a really good biller, at least reputation. We spent quite a bit of time on the phone. I hadn't signed a contract with her, but she was very, I guess the best word, is anal. She's very particular, obsessive compulsive kind of person, and that's the kind of person you really want in billing. I didn't realize it at the time, but it is. And I'd also started interviewing at Starbucks at night because I'm still working these 10-hour days in my day job. Medical assistants, I interviewed about 10 and came up with one. I'll talk about her more later in the next and final tape, I hope final. But then I was thrown a curveball that caused enormous problems for us. And I already talked about the problem with calling the number on the side of the building. Well, I went up to see my new landlord to drop off the check. They had the contract, and I said, by the way, I should be starting to get mail now. Where do I pick it up at? And they said, You don't get mail at that building. We don't want mail delivered at that building. I said, what? You know, it's a business office building right in the middle of town. You can see the post office. They said, no, mailbox would look tacky. This is a complete nightmare. Suddenly, my main address that I got the fire department to give me is invalid. I marched down to the post office and I said, I want to see the postmaster. And they said, what's going on? I said, where's my mail? And the postmaster is the same way. We're not going to deliver mail up there. And they drove right past it every day, right? Back and forth. There's not a mailbox. They're not going to deliver mail. And I go back to the landlord. I want to put up a mailbox. No, it'll look bad. Well, guess what? Well, now every single insurance company that's signed on has started sending little cards and things for me to sign off on to that address, and it was returned to the insurance company. So immediately the $10,000 I had just invested in credentialing was really baloney. It was wasted because now I got a mailbox that doesn't work. It's a disaster for a medical practice to not have a mailing address. I fought for this from May until December. I mean, I was exhausted from fighting about this. Most people say, well, why didn't you just back out your lease? Well, I mean, I was talking about these foundational blocks. What is the game that you stack the little bricks on top of each other and you start pulling them out? This is what this is like. So you have like 5 or 6 foundational blocks. If any one of them is missing, the whole thing collapses. And one of these was having an address, a street address. The malpractice was based on it. Now, the insurance companies, the loan, all this paperwork is now being lost, and it's a disaster. I don't have a penny now. I take my own $30,000, inject it to the company, so I'm fighting, and I'm still working full time over on the mainland. It's a 30, 45-minute drive back and forth trying to fight with the post office. But the reason I did not pull out is that I've already done some marketing, getting this thing started. Marketing was my entrepreneurial desire of getting this thing going and using his address. So that's one thing. But the other thing is I had signed a lease. I think it was a 2-year lease. And I'm trying to get out of another contract right now. And these things are not easy to get out of. I could almost guarantee you that even if I'd taken the landlord to court, I would be held to that lease for 2 full years. Because nowhere in the lease did it discuss a mailbox. But would a normal human being who's renting an office space in an office building in the heart of town not expect to get mail? I mean, to me, that's one of those things I don't think is any mistake I made. It's just one of those curveballs that comes your way. But you got to be prepared for it. And people watching this who are going to start their practice may not deal with any of these curveballs. They'll have their own curveballs that I never even thought of. There may be a toxic waste dump under their building or something. So anyway, what happened, I had to get a P.O. box. So I got a P.O. box pretty easily, but I already felt bad about that because now I got to change the address with the malpractice, with all the insurance companies, and etc. So that was a problem. But I only knew the tip of the iceberg because, as I mentioned earlier, insurance companies are not really happy to pay you for the care that you give. So what I found out was the majority of insurance companies did not pay us a penny for almost the first year because in their policy, they must have these policy books about 5 feet thick. Somewhere in their policy book, and I mean, I couldn't find any of our contracts, they do not make payments to medical practices that have P.O. boxes. Now, it's funny that in the December 2011, when I finally got a mailbox put up in front of my office on the street after fighting this for so long, I had to let all the health insurance companies know, and I had to send a little card, change of address, to their P.O. box. So they all have P.O. boxes. None of them have street addresses. So, it's another one of those injustices that I think has to change. I mean, they set the rules. If you want to see our patients that contracted with our insurance company or who have policies, then you have to play by our rules. And we have a million rules you got to play by. If you miss one rule, we're not going to pay you. So all those patients I saw for months, the vast majority of them, I got 0 payment for. And that put us in a hole. I mean, by the end of the year, we were in debt. Not in debt. I mean, it's the debt I had estimated I would need $90,000 to $100,000. But I was expecting within months that money would be replenished by seeing patients. So Very frustrating situation. And if I was to do this same practice over, I mean, I don't know how to have avoided that. I mean, I wouldn't have rented the space I'm in because the landlord just had an attitude that he didn't really care about anything. And I said he. I know I mentioned earlier that the wife got the building in the divorce, but she shares the building with a partner, a male partner, a business partner. Now, I want to add one more thing here before I finish this. And I'm trying to remember what the last big problem was. And maybe I'll just close at this point because this tape is getting pretty long. Now, the next time, I think I can finish this up next time. But there was one other thing on my mind, and I just can't think of it right now. But I'll think of it by tomorrow or next day. I'm trying to get these tapes done because my wife is coming out to join me at the end of the week, and I'm here alone in a foreign country. I am talking to locals now and getting to know them, but it gets pretty lonely sometimes. So now I'm filling up my time with writing on my book and doing these videotapes. So see you in the next few days. Hi, I'm throwing in some what you call bonus feature. I was talking about living in my cave. It is all like the cave. But I'm going to show you around just briefly, and I think it's sort of funny that to escape insurance companies, I've come to live in a cave on an island in the Mediterranean without, well, I do have internet, of course, but I don't have email, and I have limited phone calls, and I'm alone for a month. But this is how insurance companies can drive you nuts. But I want to show you around just a little bit. It is dark out now, but you can see, I hope you can see the water. That's the Mediterranean around outside my door. Let me open the glass there. That's better. And then let me show you around my cave. I'm actually sort of like camping out in here. There's my backpack. I travel for a month supplying that little backpack. Little kitchenette area. Let me see if I can zoom out. Nope. And it's dark in here and damp. That's why you can't see things very well. It's got electricity. Now, I'm a history buff, and I wanted this place. I wanted to live in a place like this because this is part of the old walls. And these date back to at least 1550, because that's when the Knights of St. John came here and built the castle that this is part of. I'll show you my bathroom is literally inside a cave. This is part of a cave that my shower's in. But I do have a kitchen. And a stove, little stove. This place was demolished first by a huge, called the Siege of Malta, if you ever want to hear about it. And this castle was destroyed by the Ottomans, but also World War II was bombed heavily. So what you're looking at here, this is why they think it could have been an old stable, because in the bedrock it's been carved out here, maybe a manger type of setting, and then the stone on top of that. So now this part of the old wall, the top part that was destroyed and blown off, has been turned into apartments. So this goes up of apartments about 4 floors, and I'm in the base floor, in the oldest part. And I was very careful of wanting to pick this, but just because of my interest in history. So this is the cave that PAs end up in when they go stir crazy from fighting with insurance companies or burn out for any other reason, bad bosses or whatever. Pay your money and take your pick.